Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Ross Teitzel. I'm an equine veterinarian based in Melbourne, Victoria. Today, I'm going to discuss with you what happens to the feed that your horse eats and where does it go. Head to tail, we will discuss the structures and their functions that make up the horse's digestive system. Let's start at the head. This contains the lips, teeth, tongue, salivary glands, and the upper and lower jaws. The lips are very tactile. We've often seen horses sort out additives such as powders and pellets in their feed because we find them in the bottom of the feed bin. The tongue, this works by moving the food around in the mouth and also is involved in the swallow reflex. Next, the teeth. There are 36 in the female and 40 in the male. These are divided between the lower and upper jaws, and the lower jaw is wider than the upper jaw to allow for the unique chewing motion, which has both lateral, forward and backward movements. These are responsible for grinding the feed. The type of feed can affect this motion, and this can then lead to the sharp edges we often find in stabled horses on the outside of the upper teeth and the inside of the lower teeth. This occurs when the horse is fed grain, because the action to chew grain is different from the action to chew hay. Therefore, the teeth of stabled horses need to be floated every 3 months to remove these sharp edges. Saliva from the glands in the mouth mix with the feed, and because saliva contains bicarbonate, it has a buffering and protecting effect for the amino acids in the stomach, which is highly acidic. Failure of the horse to chew its feed properly can lead to a bolus of feed getting stuck in the esophagus, a condition we know as choke. The next part is the esophagus. This is a simple muscular tube connecting the mouth to the stomach. It is approximately 1.5 metres in length. Next, the stomach. This is small in relation to the size of the animal, approximately 9 to 11 metres in volume. The natural feeding habit of the horse is to eat small amounts often. We have changed that, and now in lots of cases we expect the horse to eat large amounts of grain once or twice a day. The stomach has 3 main areas: the saccus cecus, the fundus and the pylorus. Feed arriving in the stomach begins to break down under the influence of hydrochloric acid and pepsin, a protein digesting enzyme. If the feed is mainly grass and doesn't contain more than 20% fibre, then it is already releasing soluble sugars and undergoing bacterial fermentation to produce lactic acid. Normally, hydrochloric acid produced by the stomach mixes in with the feed and the pH drops and fermentation slows or stops. If it doesn't happen, then the stomach will fill with gas and you will get colic or rupture of the stomach. Changes in feeding can lead to unprotected mucosa and eventually ulcers in the stomach. Next is the small intestine. This has 3 sections: the duodenum, the jejunum and the ileum. It is 15 to 22 metres long and contains 70 litres. Food generally spends 3 to 4 hours here. It is the main area of digestion. The pancreas, a gland that connects to the small intestine, provides the enzymes that break down proteins, starches and sugars. Bile drains into the small intestine constantly, as the horse does not have a gallbladder like most other animals. Bile is involved in the digestion and absorption of fats. Food is broken down and then absorbed through the walls of the small intestine into the bloodstream and then travels to the cells that need it. In the small intestine, 30 to 60% of carbohydrate and most of protein absorption occurs. As well as this, fat-soluble vitamins A, D and E and K and the minerals calcium and phosphorus. Micronization of grains increases their digestion to 90% in the small intestine, and this decreases the burden on the large intestine and also decreases the possibility of laminitis, colic and acidosis. If the food passes too quickly through the small intestine, there is less time for the enzymes to act. The addition of oil to the diet has been shown to reduce the flow of feed through the small intestine and so increase the time for enzymes to act, and this increases the digestive efficiency. Horses are susceptible to colic and death from toxic materials in the feed. The cow has bacteria in the rumen to break these down, but the horse does not have this ability to break them down before they reach the small intestine, and so toxic materials are absorbed into the bloodstream with sometimes catastrophic results. Therefore, ensure no toxic materials such as mouldy feed or hay are fed. Horses can't absorb microbial protein produced in the hindgut, so horses with a high demand for protein, such as foals, lactating mares, race and performance horses, need to be fed high-quality protein, which can be broken down and absorbed in the small intestine. So don't increase the amount of crude protein, just increase the quality to ensure all the essential amino acids are at sufficient levels. Proteins are found in cell membranes, connective tissue, muscles, enzymes, hormones, and blood proteins. So to maintain body mass, you need large amounts of protein. The hindgut. This consists of the cecum and the large and small colons and the rectum. It is 7 metres in length and has a volume of 140 to 150 litres. Digestion here is largely by microbial breakdown of plant fibre and indigestible starches into simpler compounds called volatile fatty acids. These are short-chain fatty acids that are soluble in water, such as acetic, butyric and propionic. The cecum is a blind sac, 28 to 36 litres in volume, where microbes break down feed not digested in the small intestine. The entrance to the cecum via the ileum and the exit to the large colon are both at the top of the cecum. So problems such as impaction arise if the horse eats a lot of dry feed without sufficient water. The microbial population is somewhat specific in what feedstuffs it can digest, and it can take 2 to 3 weeks to adjust to a new diet and return to normal digestive function. This is the reason we suggest to introduce new feed over 7 to 14 days. Food spends about 7 hours in the cecum, and microbes produce vitamin K, B group vitamins, proteins and fatty acids. The vitamins and fatty acids are absorbed, but very little protein. The large colon. This is 3 to 3.5 metres in length and has a volume of 86 litres. Fermentation continues here, and most of the nutrients made by microbial digestion are absorbed here, as well as B group vitamins and some trace minerals and phosphorus. Feed spends as little as 7 hours here or as long as 48 to 65. The small colon. This is 3 to 3.5 metres in length. Its main function is to reclaim water, and thus faecal balls form which are undigested and indigestible portions of what was fed 36 to 72 hours before. The rectum and the anus. This is where the faecal balls collect and are then excreted via the anus. What do I need to remember? The main considerations when feeding your horse are to remember he is a grazing animal, normally consuming small amounts of feed often. He does not have a big stomach, so it is best to feed small amounts often than a smaller number of large meals. Ensure that all the feed is of good quality with no contaminants. Micronization of grain has been shown to improve its digestion. Feed some oil to slow the passage through the small intestine and ensure there is time for digestion in the small intestine. If you change feeds, do so over 7 to 14 days to allow the horse's digestive system to adapt to this new feed.